Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto What If Hub 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Kakashi met Orochimaru's most dangerous subordinate? Part 2. Kakashi eventually found his way to the entrance of Orochimaru's hideout, holding the fox in his arms. He turned his radio on. Guy, Miro, where are you? I've made it out. I have Naime. Come back the way we came, responded Guy's voice. We got the children out. I'll meet with you soon, Kakashi replied. He adjusted his hold on the fox and after getting further away from the cave entrance on top of another hill, he turned back just as the entire hillside collapsed on itself, creating a large cloud of dirt and smoke. Ashes and dirt flew gently in the air like snow. He turned his back to the growing cloud and started to return to the group. When he arrived, they were all seated on the ground, sharing a bit of food and water. Guy was helping a boy with cloudy eyes guide the food to his mouth while Miro sat taking notes of the rest of the children's conditions. One girl had a dark green mark splattered across her right eye and cheek. Another had her fingers webbed together. Another boy had his left arm completely missing, the bandage needing an obvious changing. Kakashi took in the rest of the children as they sat and ate greedily. Christ, Kakashi muttered under his breath. Miro looked up from his notes. Kakashi, we were beginning to worry. He shook his head. Unneeded, he said, carefully sitting on the ground beside Miro. Naime? Miro questioned, gesturing to the fox in his arms. Kakashi nodded. Orochimaru got a hold of her before we got there. I tried to undo whatever seal he put on her, but I only suppressed whatever it was doing. This was the result. He laid her carefully on the grass beside him. She'll wake up soon enough, I suppose. We need to get back to the village, Guy said, replacing the bandage on the boy's amputated arm. We can't have these children out here much longer without proper medical attention. He's right, Miro said, getting up. We need to start moving. With little coaxing, the children who couldn't walk were put onto backs, while the rest walked beside the adults as they made their return to their village. Kakashi made a makeshift sling to put the fox into and slung across his middle. The smallest of the children hung on his back. The trek back to the village was long and slow. It took nearly twice as long to return as it did to leave. It was very late at night by the time the group returned to the village. Parents and families were thrilled to be reunited with their children, but it was short-lived. All of the children needed immediate medical attention. Kakashi, Guy, and Miro escorted the families to the hospital before reporting to the Hokage. After explaining what had happened in finding the kidnapped children, they turned to the other issues at hand, what to do about Orochimaru and what to do with Naime. Naime was still a fox and unconscious in the sling Kakashi had hung around himself. How long will she be like that? The Hokage asked, moving the fabric of the sling aside to peek at the fox. You say she's loyal to Orochimaru, what do you mean by that? The Hokage asked. She's a kitsune, Kakashi replied. She's only capable of being loyal to one person at a time. You can be loyal to different people in different ways. The words she had said to him at the bottom of the pit suddenly echoed across his memory. Except, he trailed off, lost in thought. He thought of the boy he had seen in her memory, Ryu. Orochimaru had killed him. Was it because Naime had lost focus while working for Orochimaru? Did he kill him to remind her of who she was supposed to stay loyal to? What? Guy asked. Kakashi shook his head of this thoughts and repeated what she had said to him long before. It sounds to me like she can be loyal to more than one person, he explained. She just chooses who that is and why she's loyal to them. The Hokage looked intently at Kakashi. You should make her loyal to you, Hitaki. Get her to trust you completely. Kakashi blinked. How do you suggest he do that? Miro asked, raising an eyebrow. Out of all of us in here, he's the only one she's consistently seen and interacted with. She seems to at least trust you on some level. He's saved her life more than once, whether she wanted him to or not. Yeah, but it won't take overnight. You'll have to constantly be with her. Do whatever you have to make her loyal to you until we can use her to capture Orochimaru. It'll save the village and anyone else under his influence. It was hard to argue with such a statement. Save the village. Capture Orochimaru. Kakashi left with Naime still in the sling and an uneasy feeling in his stomach. Kakashi entered his apartment, shutting the door softly behind him. He carefully unraveled the sling, lifting the fox out of the fabric. She was very light in his arms, her orange and black fur soft against his skin. Gently he set her on a cushion in the middle of his living room floor. He stood back and watched her for a moment. Make her loyal to you. The Hokage's order echoed in his head. How the hell was he supposed to do that? He didn't think he was likable enough to be able to do that. As he watched, he couldn't tell if she was dead or if she was still breathing. Her tiny chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. He turned to his kitchen and got a bowl, filled it with water, and then set it beside the pillow. It was his assumption that she would be thirsty whenever she would wake up. He decided she would be okay for a little while. He changed and showered. When he returned, she was resting her head beside the half-empty water bowl, her snout between her paws, and her eyes closed. Slowly, she opened her eyes, fixing them tiredly on Kakashi as he stood in the doorway of his bedroom. It's not my idea, he defended irritably. The Hokage thinks you could be a great asset to us. You would act as an informant and go on assigned missions for us. You would report to me what you find. I know it probably doesn't sound great to you, but it's better than sitting in a jail cell. He didn't mention to her what the Hokage had said about manipulating her to be loyal to him. He still wasn't sure how he felt about that. Naime snorted, putting her head back down on her paws. He paused, thinking of what to say next. You could help us a great deal, he continued. Bring Orochimaru to justice even, he suggested. Your knowledge of what he does and how he works is valuable. She looked down at the water bowl, avoiding his gaze now. We could help you, he added softly. He sighed again when she didn't react. How could she possibly still feel loyal towards Orochimaru after all he had done to her? It didn't make sense to him. He was about to get up and leave the room when he paused. One more thing, you're Kitsunebi. You'll eventually die without getting the rest of it back, right? She glanced up at him, answering with a small nod. I will do everything I can to help you get the rest of it back without killing those kids. I promise. She lifted her head again, staring at him intently. He had to admit, the color of her eyes still unnerved him, but they didn't hold any killing intent as they had before. They were gentle as they regarded him, looking at his face, down his body, and then back to his face. Right, he said awkwardly. Well, good night. He stood and went to his bedroom, shutting the door behind him without looking back at the fox who continued to watch his every move. Kakashi soon found that having Naime in this form was similar to keeping a pet. Although he knew what she really was, he sometimes forgot she was actually a human in the form of a fox, until she would growl at him for sitting too close to her. At first, she kept to herself, refusing to move far from the cushion she had moved beside the glass door to the balcony. For hours, she would sit and stare out at the village, watching the people walk below. Eventually, she allowed Kakashi to come and sit next to her for a short while, but he didn't see the appeal of looking out a window for so long, soon getting up and finding a book to read instead. A few times he had tried to stroke her fur, earning him a quick snap from her teeth. Only once had she allowed him to pet her for a few seconds before she snapped at him again. Kakashi realized though that whenever he pulled out a book, she almost immediately became interested in what he was reading. She stuck her nose under his arm to give herself room in his lap just to look at the pages. He wondered if she had ever learned to read, even a little bit. Her curiosity was obvious. He was unsure of when he started to read aloud from his books, but it was clear she was trying to follow along with him. She let out a disappointed whine whenever he closed the book and put it away. She had begun to really enjoy hearing him read to her. After nearly a month, Kakashi was beginning to get impatient. Naime showed no signs of changing back into a human, but was ever so slowly getting more comfortable being around him. He wondered if she had any idea of what he was trying to do, although even he didn't know what he was trying to do. How did one get a kitsune to become loyal to you? During this time, Kakashi gave the Hokage updates on Naime. His reports hardly ever changed. Kakashi wasn't sure what else he could do to gain her trust, and the Hokage gave him a little advice, but his suggestions would have to wait until she was human again. Guy wasn't much help either. He had suggested to try to impress her with his abilities, but Kakashi wasn't sure she would be impressed with anything he could do. Miro had decided he didn't want anything to do with the kitsune and refused to even talk with Kakashi about her. Another month passed. Kakashi had been getting assigned missions again. While he was gone, Naime walked freely about his apartment. It wasn't very big, only with a kitchen, sitting room, a single bedroom, and a bathroom. She was dying to go outside the village again. From her spot at the window, she could barely see the tops of the trees. Kakashi's apartment was closer to the center of the village, dashing any hopes of an easy escape. Although, she had to admit she didn't want to leave. She enjoyed the quiet she had living here with Kakashi, even if she didn't always enjoy his company, but she couldn't quite shake the fear of something bad happening to her. There wasn't any possible way Orochimaru would be able to easily find her, was there? Naime woke up suddenly when she heard Kakashi returning. It was extremely late at night, nearer to morning than the night. He didn't greet her, instead immediately going to cook a meal for himself. He typically ate his meals in the kitchen where she wouldn't see his face, but Naime sensed something was wrong. She didn't know what it was, but she could sense Kakashi was off. She peeked her head around the edge of the counter to look at him. She hadn't seen his actual face since she had pulled his mask down to kiss him. As she looked, she saw him staring blankly down at the meal he had made, not moving, tension rising in the air. His mask was still covering his face, chopsticks in his hand. He then shook his head, grabbed the plate, and then moved to the sitting room. Naime followed him, unsure of this change in behavior. She sat across from him at the low table, looking at him as if to ask what was bothering him. Kakashi was typically quiet, but this silence was unnerving. His meal sat untouched in front of him. He stared blankly at the meal with his one good eye. He looked greatly troubled. "Hey, Naime," he suddenly started, not looking up at her. His voice was tense. "Have you ever given advice to someone and found that they had taken it to mean something different? So much so that they killed their entire family?" The question shocked her, but she was confused on how he expected her to answer. He didn't say anything else as he rose from the table, leaving his meal untouched. What on earth was he talking about? Naime was unsure of what to do as he went to his room, slamming the door shut behind him. She went to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. She couldn't hear him inside and assumed he was trying to sleep, but she was bothered by his behavior. Raising a paw to the door, she scratched and whined until Kakashi opened the door suddenly, startling her back a moment. "What?" he growled angrily. She stared at him before bolting into his room and jumping onto his bed. "Hey!" he exclaimed as she curled herself up into a ball at the end of his bed. He tried to get her to move, but she refused to budge. "Fine," he said, throwing his hands up. "Fine. Just take the end of the bed." "Fine." He fell onto the bed, throwing the covers over his head. Naime waited several minutes before she heard Kakashi's breath become more even. Carefully, she moved from her spot by his feet until she was near his head. Finding the edge of the blanket, she buried her nose under the cover until she found a comfortable spot against Kakashi's back. She kept her nose out of the cover so she could breathe comfortably, falling asleep beside him. Kakashi awoke the next day, feeling rested, but still mentally exhausted from what he had seen the night before. Bodies were piled in the streets where the Uchiha clan resided. Blood stained the walls, floors, and everything else. The only survivor was a young Uchiha boy named Sasuke. Reports said that his older brother, Itachi, was behind all of the killings. He had murdered his whole family, but had spared his brother. Kakashi blamed himself for not giving Itachi better guidance when he was his superior. He should have known something was going to happen. Why hadn't he seen it? Kakashi moved to sit up, throwing the blankets off of himself, but he felt something warm laying beside him. He suddenly jumped out of the bed, tripping on his own feet, and falling with a loud crash on the floor. What the hell? What are you doing? He cried, standing up, steadying himself on the dresser behind him. Naomi was now sitting up in the bed, awake after hearing Kakashi crashing about. What's going on? She asked, looking around frantically, then down at herself. Oh my god, she cried, quickly grabbing the blankets and covering herself with them. I'm so sorry. She apologized quickly. I'm so sorry. What are you doing in my bed? Kakashi demanded, trying to regain his composure. He had gone to bed seeing her as a fox lying at his feet. Now she was human again, frantically trying to cover herself with his blankets. He sighed again and sat at the low table, waiting for her to come out. After a few minutes, Naomi came out of his room and sat across from him, her arms crossed over her chest. The gray shirt she was wearing was obviously too big, and so were the pants. She had found a spare wrap to tie around her waist to keep them up. Her hair was still a mess, but it looked like she had at least attempted to fix it. Kakashi opened his mouth to speak, but she started first. Before you ask me anything, what happened last night? You were acting weird and then you asked me that question. What happened that bothered you so much? He looked at her. Her expression showed an odd mixture of annoyance and concern. He sighed, shaking his head. I don't know all the details yet, he started. Someone I know murdered his entire clan, leaving only his little brother alive. His voice went quiet. I could have stopped it. Why didn't you? She asked, not meaning for her question to be rude. I didn't know. You didn't know it was going to happen. He nodded. Then how can you blame yourself for what you didn't know? He was under my supervision. I should have seen something. She was quiet. Silence passed between them for several uncomfortable minutes. He exhaled heavily. Anyway, we need to report to the Hokage. Show him you're back to normal. Naomi scoffed. Why do we have to do that? Because you're still my responsibility. I don't need a babysitter, she countered irritably. No, maybe not. But you're still in my house. Remember, it's better than a jail cell, he reminded her. She made a face. I should probably call Kairi as well, get her to examine you. Quick question, he said, reaching for a book on the table. Did you ever learn to read? She glanced at the book. No, he nodded. I was just wondering, he said, flipping through the pages. I wondered because you were following along whenever I read aloud. She looked down at her lap. I was trying to figure it out, she said quietly. He closed the book. Hey, don't think I'm trying to make it sound like a bad thing you were doing that. I don't want to discourage you from learning. Then will you teach me? She asked suddenly, looking up at him hopefully. Kakashi was about to say he wasn't a teacher, but slowly realized this would be a good opportunity to get her to trust him. He put the book down, shrugging. I guess, he said slowly. I'm really not a good teacher though. She stayed quiet, smiling back down at her lap. He thought she looked much more pleasant smiling instead of glaring at him like she usually did. I did some research on you, he said, changing the subject. Her brows furrowed. Well, not you specifically. What you are. You have questions then, she stated. He nodded. A lot of the illustrations had the foxes with multiple tails. Some of them having as many as 9. How come you only have 1? She shifted uncomfortably. It comes with age, she replied. The more tails a kitsune has usually means they're much older and wiser. That's what I thought, but I wanted to confirm. So then, you only have 1, how old are you? Kakashi asked. You don't look very old. Naomi shook her head. No, I'm not. Nor am I very wise, if that wasn't obvious by my life choices. I'm only 20, I think. You think. My memories only go back as far as 10 years ago when I was with my father. He always told me I had probably gotten amnesia from a head injury during the war. She tapped her forehead as if pointing to a long-healed wound. Kakashi thought of the memory he had seen of a younger Ryu and Naomi playing through a house. They couldn't have been much older than 12, maybe a little younger. He remembered the room they had interrupted with all the armed soldiers and how Naomi had focused on one man. The man had been huge, but he oddly seemed very gentle. Was he one of the men in the memory I saw? She nodded. Yes, she answered in a quiet voice. That was Abba. And the woman who yelled at you? That was Shinju, right? The woman who wants you dead. She nodded again. Kakashi was getting more information from her than he thought he would. It was almost too easy. What happened to Ryu? You said Orochimaru killed him. Immediately, Naomi looked fiercely infuriated. Orochimaru did kill him. She stood up quickly. Don't ask me about him again. You saw what happened. She stormed off into the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind her. After a moment or two, Kakashi heard water running in the shower. Naomi didn't come out of the bathroom for nearly an hour. Instead of staying at the table waiting for her, Kakashi had called Kairi, telling her Naomi needed a health examination. He then searched through his dresser to try to find a pair of pants that may fit her better, but didn't find any. He called Kairi again, asking her to bring a couple sets of clothes with her for Naomi. Naomi finally came out of the bathroom just as Kakashi was finishing a meal he had made. Quickly, he pulled his mask back over his face when he heard the door opening. Her plate sat opposite of his at the table. Kairi is on her way here, Kakashi told her as she sat across from him. She'll have clothes for you. Good. Then you won't have to keep staring at me so much, she said, taking a mouthful of rice. I'm not staring, Kakashi said defensively. That's what you think, she countered while chewing. I'm just your responsibility, so you're just doing your job at keeping an eye on me. He opened his mouth to reply, but he suddenly noticed the mark on her left hand. The seal was still there. He hadn't removed it yet. Give me your hand, he demanded suddenly, catching Naomi mid-bite. Hey, she exclaimed as he grabbed her hand to examine it. The mark looked lighter in color than Kakashi remembered it initially being, but that may have been the lighting in the cave. Do you remember how you got this? He asked her, glancing up at her face before looking back at the mark. Naomi's mind dashed through her memories of that night. She remembered fighting Orochimaru, but she wasn't sure where or when he had made the new mark. You'll be able to remove it, right? She asked. Like the beetle. It's possible, he replied, letting her have her hand back. I tried to remove it before, but I didn't have a chance to finish. She held her hand back out to him. Then can you finish it right now? Finish eating first, he said, pushing her hand away. She frowned, but she returned to eating anyway. When she was done, she went to hold her hand out again, but suddenly froze. Someone's coming, she said hurriedly, dashing to Kakashi's bedroom and slamming the door behind her. Kakashi still sat at the table, wondering what she was talking about, when he heard a knock on his door. He jumped up to answer it, finding Kairi standing on the landing with a large suitcase at her side. Hello, Kakashi-san, she greeted cheerfully. Hi, he replied, letting her inside. Glad I caught you while you were still in town, he said, shutting the door behind her. Oh, I'm always around here nowadays, dear. I'm called out a little more often than I would prefer, but patients need to be seen. Kairi set her suitcase on the floor. Speaking of patients, she stated, glancing around the apartment, where is she? She bolted into my bedroom. I guess she heard you coming up the stairs. Kairi furrowed her brow. That's odd. I'm normally very quiet. He went to his bedroom door. Naomi, come out of there. It was just Kairi. Oh, Kakashi, Kairi said quickly. Did you tell her about? Her voice trailed off when Naomi opened the door. Kakashi shook his head at Kairi, answering her unvoiced question. Ah, Naya, good to see you again. She looked at her clothes, putting her hands on her hips and tutting. Oh, dear, I've got you some real clothes in my bag. Come, you can change while I examine you. Kakashi, wait out here. We won't be long. Naomi didn't have a chance to protest before Kairi pushed her back into the bedroom, shutting the door behind them. All right then, Kairi started while Naomi removed Kakashi's clothes. Anything in particular bothering you? She asked. Your heart beating normally. Lungs giving you breath. Your skin isn't dry. Naomi shook her head. I'm perfectly fine, she replied. Honest. Well, I'll determine that for real, Kairi replied, grabbing a stethoscope out of her bag. She then went through the process of listening to her lungs and then her heart. Does your heart normally beat that fast? Kairi inquired. Naomi shrugged. I suppose. Kairi hummed. Hold still for me. Kairi stood directly in front of Naomi, took off her glasses, then crossed her arms under her chest. Suddenly, Kairi's eyes went completely white as she concentrated on Naomi. Just as I thought, she muttered after several minutes as her eyes went back to their normal yellow. Is something wrong? Naomi asked unsuredly. Kairi put her glasses back on her face. Do kitsunes normally have that little kitsunebi surrounding their heart? She asked suddenly. Naomi blinked. Had Kairi been around other kitsunes? No, she admitted. Do you know about Orochimaru stealing your fox fire? Yes. Kakashi's had me look into it. It's not easy when your kind is so few and becoming even fewer. Kairi reached into her suitcase and pulled out some clothes, handing them to Naomi. I'm doing what I can, she continued, though I can't say it's looking like you'll be getting it back anytime soon. She shook her head with a sigh. Whatever evil Orochimaru did to those kids made them completely dependent on your fox fire to keep them alive. Naomi looked at the clothes in her lap. If that's the case, she said quietly, let them keep it. Kairi moved some loose hair behind her ear. Everything will be okay, she assured her, sitting beside her. I'm going to do the best I can. Naomi nodded. Thank you for the clothes, she said softly after a few minutes of silence passed. You're welcome. After Naomi was properly dressed, they exited Kakashi's room together. Kakashi looked up from the book he was reading. Everything okay? He asked. Perfectly healthy, Kairi replied. Ready to go then? He asked Naomi. Go, she asked. We have to go see the Hokage, remember? He shut his book and crossed the room to them. There are some things the two of us have to discuss with him. Thank you for coming, Kairi. Just call me if you ever need me, she said, waving her hand. Naya, if he ever gives you any trouble, let me know. She eyed Kakashi before picking up her suitcase and leaving the two alone. Those clothes look better on you than mine did, Kakashi said awkwardly. Naomi looked down at herself. Kairi had brought her a light purple top with matching pants. A dark purple wrap tied around her middle, holding the top together. I guess so. Not so sure purple is my color. Kakashi cleared his throat. Anyway, we should go. The Hokage is expecting us. Right. As they walked through the village towards the Hokage's office building, Kakashi was attempting to give Naomi instructions. You should be respectful, he told her, walking slightly ahead of her. Look at him when he's talking to you. Don't say anything rude. He glanced down at her. Hey, are you even listening? Yeah, Naomi said, waving her hand. Be polite and keep my mouth shut, got it? You can talk, he replied tiredly. If you would rather I not say anything rude, then keeping my mouth shut is your best bet, she said matter-of-factly. Kakashi sighed irritably. Come on, we're almost there. They approached the building and climbed the stairs to the upper office of the Hokage. Kakashi stopped Naomi in front of the door. Just try to remember some manners, he urged her. Stop worrying about me, she said, feeling annoyed as they were allowed inside of the office. Lord Hokage, Kakashi greeted, kneeling in front of the desk where Hiruzen Sarutobi sat. Kakashi glanced at Naomi who was standing awkwardly beside him. Pissed. He hissed at her. It's all right, Hitaki, Sarutobi assured him before Naime could bother kneeling as well. Don't worry about that this time. Kakashi stood, stealing an annoyed look at Naime. Sir, he began, gesturing to her, this is the kitsune I was telling you about. Yes, I've heard much about you, he said, approaching her. You're looking in excellent health. Naime, isn't it? She nodded. How have you been? I'm fine, thanks, she replied, shaking his extended hand. Good, good. He returned to sitting behind his desk. Naime, do you have any idea why I wanted to speak with you? She shook her head. He turned to Kakashi. You didn't tell her? He asked, slightly surprised. Kakashi shook his head. There wasn't any moment I could have brought it up since you and I last spoke about it, he replied. Kairi came in first thing this morning and we walked here immediately after and we couldn't have talked about it in public. Sarutobi nodded. Understandable. Naime looked at Kakashi indignantly. What are you talking about? She looked at Sarutobi. Why do you have to be mysterious about whatever this is? Just say it. Naime, Kakashi warned. Watch your tone. Alright then, the Hokage agreed. I'll get right to it. Our village is currently under attack by two significant individuals, a man named Orochimaru and a woman named Shinju. You know them, correct? Naime was frozen to her spot at the sound of their names, but nodded regardless. The Hokage continued. Orochimaru, as you know, has done horrible experiments not only on our children, but also on our shinobi. I fear he may be planning to do worse if we don't stop him soon. We must find him. As for Shinju, her crimes are different. She's brought a plethora of illegal drugs and weapons through an underground black market. The drugs she's produced have found their way into our village and have absolutely ruined many good shinobi and their families. If we find and stop her, I believe it will save our village from going to ruin. He leaned forward in his chair, staring intently at Naime. With your help, we can find both Orochimaru and Shinju and bring them to justice. Naime stared back at Sarutobi. You want me to help you? He nodded. Yes, he replied simply. Naime looked to Kakashi, cracking a small smile. This is a joke, right? Kakashi shook his head. No, it's not. Her smile faded. She began to shake her head. No, she said flatly. I won't do it. I can't help you and I won't. No, the Hokage questioned. You don't want to see Orochimaru be punished for his crimes. Or Shinju. You're asking me to do something I can't do, she said firmly. Why can't you? Kakashi asked. It's either you help us or you serve your sentence behind bars. Is that what this is? She cried angrily. A trial to see if I would help you. I will not. Naime. Kakashi grabbed her upper arm and pulled her to his side, whispering harshly in her ear. You can disagree all you want, but think about the consequences. The consequences? Naime shouted, her voice growing louder. You are asking me to go after the two people who want me dead. Kakashi. Naime, Sarutobi said firmly, his voice raised above their argument. He was standing now. Kakashi immediately let go of Naime's arm. I understand this is a big decision that cannot be taken lightly, he continued, his voice softer. However, if you are willing, we must act quickly. I can't give you more than a day to think this over. However, understand that if you are not willing to work alongside us, you will be given a trial and be sentenced for your crimes. Your help in finding the children Orochimaru kidnapped will be considered to alleviate any official punishment. He nodded to Kakashi. That is all. You're dismissed. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Kakashi said hurriedly, as Naime immediately stormed out of the room. Kakashi followed her out, having to run to catch up with her. He grabbed onto her arm again and pulled her into an empty room, slamming the door shut behind them. Stop manhandling me, Naime cried, prying his fingers off her arm. I am not a doll that can be tossed around. I had told you to be respectful. Kakashi said angrily. You were inappropriate and out of line. I told you, you're asking me to go after the two people in this world who would love to see my head on a silver platter. She glared up at him. I have feelings too, ya know. I'm human too. I'm not just some half-breed tool you can use however you wish. I don't care what your Hokage wants me to do. He stepped towards her intimidatingly, pressing her back against a wall. You should care, he told her. He was inches from her face. Funny thing you should know, if I remember correctly, you stole village secrets and had planned to give them to an enemy of ours. And if I remember correctly, by law, that is punishable by death. With that sort of a charge, it doesn't matter what you did to save those kids. Do you understand what I'm saying? Naomi stared at him, tears rimming her eyes. She blinked them away. How dare you, she growled. So if I were you, Kakashi continued, I would choose the option that has a better chance of living. I'm dying anyway, so what does it matter? Naomi cried, pushing his chest. What does it matter, Kakashi? He was taken aback for a moment, shocked by what she had said. Tell me something, he said, grabbing her hands to keep her from hitting him again. Why didn't you ever leave? You've stayed at my apartment for the last 2 months and you never bothered to leave. Why is that? Because you kept me prisoner. I did not. The door was never locked, he interrupted. You could have left any time, but you stayed. Why did you stay? Naomi forgot her anger for a moment, considering Kakashi's question. She had thought about leaving, but only to run around outside of the village, yet had planned to return afterwards. She honestly hadn't noticed that she could just leave either, but at the same time she had never bothered to check the door. The only thing truly keeping her indoors was her fear that Orochimaru would find her and finally kill her. As far as Naomi knew, Shinju was on the other side of the continent and was much easier to avoid. Staying with Kakashi had made her feel safe. Because, her voice faded. She looked at her hands in his, pausing to stare at them. He was being gentle now and she didn't like the sudden change in mood. She wrenched her hands from his, placing them firmly at her sides. She looked fiercely into his eye. Fine, she said at last. I'll help you track them down, but I'm no good to you dead, so you better keep me alive. I'll go inform the Hokage, he stated, turning around to leave the room. Wait, she cried, stopping him at the door. I need to talk to Kairi first before you tell him anything. Kairi, he questioned. What for? You just saw her this morning. It's something personal, she replied quickly. Her heart was pounding hard in her chest as the tension between them died down. I have some questions for her. Well, he considered, I can show you where she lives, but there's no guarantee you'll see her anytime soon. She may be out tending to some patients. He opened the door. I'll take you there, but we really should go and talk to the Hokage right now. She shook her head. Please, that can wait, she insisted. He gave me a whole day, didn't he? It can wait. Besides, she said, shrugging her shoulders, I may change my mind. He narrowed his eyes. You're blackmailing me. Only slightly, she admitted teasingly. Now can you show me where Kairi lives? He sighed irritably. Fine. Come on. Kairi looked up from sorting a basket of medicine bottles to the sound of the door to her clinic opening, ringing a little bell. She set the basket of unsorted bottles on the counter, pushed her glasses back up on her face, and walked to the front counter. Back to see me already? Kairi asked, surprised to find Naomi and Kakashi standing in the waiting room. Did something happen? She needed to talk to you, Kakashi said, indicating to Naomi who had been admiring a painting on the wall. Said it was important. Kiri-ie. Another voice shouted loudly from the other side of the clinic before Kairi could reply. Kiri. Just a moment, Kairi apologized with obvious tiredness to her voice. My sister, Seo, what? She yelled walking away from the counter. She does have other patients, Kakashi said to Naomi. You sure this can't wait? Naomi sighed. It probably can for a little while, but it is important. What is so important that you can't wait? She shot him a glare. She gave me the impression that I'm not the first kitsune she's interacted with. I need to know what she knows about my kind. And this can't wait, he asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Can you? She retorted, annoyed. There's more, but I don't want to discuss it with you. He scoffed. I didn't want to hear about it anyway, he muttered, his feelings of anger returning to him from their earlier argument. Kairi returned a few minutes later. I'm sorry about that, she apologized, cleaning her glasses on the edge of her coat. My sister had a problem with one of our patients. Nothing to worry about. She smiled brightly at Naomi. Well, come on back then, Naya. She waved at her to follow her, walking back down the hallway. She led her to a corner room that smelled strongly of cleaning solution. Naomi sat on the table while Kairi took a seat on a wheeled chair. What seems to be the problem? Kairi asked, picking up a clipboard and a pen. You seemed healthy this morning. I just have some questions, Naomi replied. She told Kairi about the Hokage's offer and the argument that followed with Kakashi. Kairi listened intently. You know I'm dying. Albeit slowly, Naomi said almost too bluntly, but I don't think they understand that. My question is, how long do you think I can live with what little kitsunebi I have left? She had been pondering this question since she had learned she wouldn't get her foxfire back. Kairi nibbled on the end of her pen, looking thoughtful. Well, she replied, taking the pen out of her mouth, that really depends. You may have a year, or many months, or even weeks depending on how careful you are while using your kitsunebi. But how do you know that? She questioned. I can't be the only kitsune you've dealt with if that's what you think. Kairi shook her head. No, you're not, but you're only the second one I've dealt with. The other one was very old when she lost her kitsunebi. I think because you're younger, you'll probably last longer than she did. This is just a theory though. Naomi didn't feel comforted by this. But on the other hand, Kairi continued, it is possible that you could just live out a normal life without your lack of kitsunebi to bother you. You would probably just have a normal human lifespan instead of a significantly longer one of a kitsune's. I suppose, she said, her mind whirring. If you want, I could monitor your health to make sure nothing major is happening just yet, Kairi suggested. Come in once every other month and we can check your heart and your kitsunebi. She stood and put the clipboard on the counter behind her. Sit up straight for me, she ordered, taking her glasses off. Her eyes went white again as she examined her. After several minutes, her eyes changed back to yellow. Nothing's changed since this morning, but I'll go ahead and make note of how you are now. She had picked up the clipboard again and scribbled something. And since you're going to be going after Orochimaru and Shinju, I would suggest you monitor yourself too. Any chest pains, any control you have over yourself, anything you think would be a symptom related to your kitsunebi. I'll let Kakashi know to watch out for this stuff too. Naomi groaned. Do you have to tell him? She asked. I tell him what he needs to know and nothing else, Kairi replied. He is supposed to be taking care of you anyway. Naomi made a face. She put her hands on her hips. He's done quite a lot for you, you know. It wouldn't hurt to say, thank you, at least once, she chastised. There's just as much going on with him as there is with you, so show a little grace to him, would you? Naomi furrowed her brow. What's going on with him? Ask him yourself. It seems like you two need to learn to get along better anyway. She sighed. Is there anything else you need from me? Naomi shook her head. No, that was everything, she said quietly. All right then, get going. You have some work to do, don't you? She followed Kairi back out to the waiting room. Kakashi stood when they entered, shutting the book in his hands and shoving it into one of his pouches. All good, Naomi nodded. Kairi quickly explained to Kakashi what he needed to monitor for Naomi's health. I'll be sure to do that, he said reassuringly. He turned back to Naomi. Let's go back and report to the Hokage. She walked towards him, letting him lead her out the door. Thanks for everything again, KY. Kairi said, holding up a hand. Not so fast, Kakashi. What? He asked, looking back at her as they paused in the doorway. I have a suggestion first. Before you go and report to the Hokage about her agreement, take some time to sit down and talk to each other. And not in a hostile way. Kairi pointed at them. Kakashi, tell her what's going on with you. Naya, tell him what's going on with you. And boom, she clapped her hands together, mutual understanding. She smiled. Now, get going you two. The Hokage can wait until tomorrow. Kakashi and Naime stared at Kairi, then at each other, then at Kairi again. Well, it is getting late, said Naime. She tugged on the front of Kakashi's shirt attempting to lead him out the door. Let's just go back to your apartment and talk to the Hokage tomorrow. He's not going to go anywhere. He looked down at her, giving in with a sigh. Fine. We'll talk to him tomorrow. He turned to Kairi. Have a good night, Kairi. Kairi waved. Good night you too, she said with a smile. Kakashi and Naime looked uncomfortably at each other as they left, avoiding eye contact the rest of the way down the darkening road back to the apartment. Kakashi and Naime continued to walk in an awkward silence down the darkening street. Kakashi couldn't remember the last time he had felt so uncomfortable in a situation. He glanced at Naime. She seemed to feel just as uncomfortable as he did. Kairi had made it seem like she knew something about the two of them they didn't. She acts like we're in a relationship, Kakashi thought to himself, shaking his head. The street was lit by the lights from restaurants and the lamps hanging from ropes across the buildings. The glow was warm and the smell of food inviting. Crowds of people were still milling about the marketplace, even as the sun went down. Conversations were loud as people discussed their plans for an upcoming festival. Laughter echoed across the street. Naime glanced into the restaurants as they passed, trying to keep her mouth from watering. Kakashi, she said, holding his arm back. Let's get something to eat. There's food at my apartment, he replied flatly, pulling his arm from her hand. She frowned, but continued to follow him. As they walked, Naime felt increasingly uneasy. It wasn't because of Kairi's comment, but with every person they moved past, she was feeling overwhelmed by sensing everyone's individual patterns. Her head felt dizzy. She reached out and grabbed the edge of Kakashi's shirt, pulling him back. Now what? Kakashi asked, annoyed, looking back at her. Whoa, hey, are you okay? He caught her before she completely lost her balance. What's wrong? Just tired, she replied unconvincingly. Come on, he urged. We're almost there. Kakashi put his arm under hers and half carried, half dragged her down the street. People gave them strange looks as they passed. Can you use your legs at all? Slow down and I'll be able to, she said tiredly. Immediately, Kakashi felt her entire body tense. She quickly glanced around them, as if looking for someone. What is it? He asked, looking around as well. Someone's been following us, she whispered, hardly moving her lips as she spoke. I thought I recognized his chakra pattern, but I wasn't sure. Wait, you can detect chakra patterns? Kakashi asked, surprised. How come you didn't tell me this before? As if I've consistently told you things about me, Naime countered, still looking around them. She was leaning heavily against Kakashi. Wait here, she said, quickly pushing herself off of him and weaving herself into the crowd. Hey, you're not well. Naime, come back, Kakashi yelled, straining to see her between the people. Damn it. He pushed his way between the villagers, accidentally knocking their items out of their hands, and apologizing hurriedly before moving on to try to find her. He stopped to look above people's heads, searching for at least a glimmer off of her black hair. She was simply gone. Seriously, he huffed. Hell, he didn't know the extent of her health, but she was obviously dizzy and needed rest. He was surprised she had taken off when she did. She was able to sense someone following us, but who? He thought to himself. He decided to find the spot where she had told him to wait, in case she had come back. He waited a few minutes until he finally spotted her moving between the crowds. Naime, he called, catching up with her before she could fall again. You can't just run off like that. He scolded. Who were you looking for? Not here, she whispered harshly, letting Kakashi put his arms around her to help her the rest of the way to his apartment. Hey, you're not well. Naime, Come back. Kakashi's shouts were drowned in the din of the people around her. She couldn't let him see where she was going. She sensed Kabuto was hiding in an alleyway close by. With her head pounding, she quickly ducked into the darkness of the alley, meeting Kabuto behind a large pile of trash. The smell of the garbage made her crinkle her nose in disgust. Kabuto was disguised again, wearing a mask over his face and an odd hat over his eyes. When she caught up to him, she tried not to lean too much against the wall behind her. "What are you doing here?" she asked between breaths. "You've got some nerve. I'm not here to take you away from this village," he said sharply, cutting her off. "You've obviously gotten them to trust you enough they want you as their spy. Then why are you here?" she asked again. "What does Orochimaru want? What more could the bastard still want with me? You know he would rather have you dead right now," Kabuto said seriously. "You may want to take that threat a little more to heart. Especially after the last time. He didn't appreciate you coming at him with a sword. I didn't appreciate him beating me and shoving me into a closet," Naime growled. "I also didn't appreciate him controlling me like a puppet whenever he wanted." Kabuto forcefully grabbed her left hand, bringing it closer to the only bit of street light in the dark alley. "Your friend Kakashi Hatake hasn't removed this seal yet. That's surprising. You would think they would want you completely under their control rather than under Orochimaru's." She tore her hand from his grip. "He's not my friend," she replied defensively. "Then whatever he is to you, be careful," he warned. "You don't want a repeat with Ryu now, do you? You have no right to speak about him," Naime hissed. She could feel her skin growing hot. Kabuto smirked. "Be careful," he repeated, pointing at her seal. "If you don't want him to find you, I would get that removed as soon as possible." With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Naime slumped against the wall as her exhaustion settled. Her skin slowly cooled, but her head continued to swim. She barely remembered getting up and finding her way back to Kakashi. She also barely remembered him carrying her up the stairs and into his apartment. He had gently laid her on his bed, covering her with the blankets. It was still too early in the evening for him to sleep, so instead he made soup for them both, ate, then checked on Naime. She was still resting. Quietly, he pulled out an extra cushion and comforter for himself and laid it out on the floor beside his bed. Kakashi was nearly asleep when he finally heard Naime moving on the bed above him. He saw her silhouette in the darkness, sitting up against the wall. "Hey," he said softly, sitting up as well. "You alright?" He saw her shake her head. "Hang on a sec," he said, reaching towards the lamp on the nightstand, lighting the room with a soft glow. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, pointing to the empty space beside her. She nodded, moving over to give him more room. They sat in silence for a long time. Kakashi thought she looked troubled. "What's going on?" he asked finally. "Who was following us earlier tonight?" She took a deep breath before turning her head towards him. "It's nobody you would know," she replied. "Okay then," he said, nodding his head. "Then why were we being followed?" "He just wanted to warn me." She paused. "I think Orochimaru knows where I am." She told him the conversation she had with Kabuto, avoiding giving Kakashi his name and what he had said about Ryu. "We'll take care of that seal right after we talk to the Hokage tomorrow," he assured her. She nodded before tiredly leaning her head against his shoulder. He looked down at her, surprised she was being this comfortable, especially after the heated argument they had earlier in the day. Silence passed between them again. "Kakashi," Naime said quietly, "I'm dying." "I know," he said softly. Silence again. "I'm being reassigned from Anbu to become a teacher," Kakashi said finally. "I'm not sure what that means for you being under my supervision, but we'll discuss that tomorrow." He wasn't sure why now of all times the Hokage had decided to remove him from Anbu. If Naime was going to be their ally, she needed someone she could trust. That was the whole point of getting her to become loyal to him, wasn't it? Naime adjusted herself beside him, wrapping her arm around his. Again, Kakashi was surprised by her behavior, but said nothing. They sat quietly, listening to the street below calm down as the night continued on. Eventually, Kakashi realized she had fallen asleep on him. Her arm was still wrapped around his, but he was in no hurry to move. He was comfortable beside her. She was warm and peaceful. She hadn't said anything directly to him, but he wondered if this was how she was beginning to show that she trusted him. You can be loyal to different people in different ways. How was she going to be loyal to him? Kakashi let his mind ponder this while he slowly drifted off to sleep, leaning his head against Naime's. Kakashi woke with a start, finding himself still sitting up against the wall. Beside him, Naime was curled up against him, still holding onto his arm. He observed her for a few moments, staring at her sleeping face, which was mostly covered by her hair. He gently moved the hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear. She smiled slightly in her sleep, adjusting herself closer to him. Ryu, she breathed sleepily. Kakashi frowned, surprised to find that he felt disappointed she didn't realize it was him. He sighed heavily, looking out the window as the sun slowly peeked over the horizon of the village. He was thinking of ways he could get out of Naime's grasp without waking her when she suddenly jumped away from him, awake and looking fearful as though he had just tried to attack her. Hey, it's alright, Kakashi said, putting his hands up. It's just me. Naime tried to relax and slow her breathing down. Right, she panted. Just you. She ran her fingers through her hair. It's just you, she assured herself. Are you alright? He asked, knowing he was probably going to receive a vague answer. I'm fine, she replied, putting her face into her hands. He slid from the bed, standing beside it. He held his hand out to her. Come on, he said, we've got a long day ahead of us. She peeked from between her fingers, not reaching for his hand. He sighed, lowering his hand slightly. I get nightmares too, he admitted softly. He reached out to her again. She eyed his hand, hesitating to take it. Hey, breakfast isn't going to make itself, he said, trying to joke with her. She hesitated still, but took hold of his hand anyway, letting him lead her out of the bedroom. He sat her down at the low table, going to the kitchen. After several minutes, he returned with 2 plates of eggs for the both of him. Eat up, he told her. We have a long discussion with the Hokage today. She nodded, picking up her utensils to eat. She watched him as he removed his mask to eat. Why do you wear that mask all the time? She asked. It doesn't seem to serve much of a purpose other than hiding your face. Kakashi paused. I wear it to cover my scar, he replied shortly, shoving food into his mouth and avoiding her gaze. She frowned. That's one excuse, but your village headband does a better job of that. Why not show your face? There's really nothing wrong with it. He finished chewing before replying sternly. Please, hurry and eat so we can go talk to the Hokage. She huffed. Fine. I guess I'm not allowed to ask questions about you, even though you've asked plenty of questions about me. He kept quiet, though he silently agreed that she was right. He was being unfair and he knew it. However, he was more irritated that he couldn't keep her from wanting to argue with him nearly every time they spoke to each other. It was almost as though she purposely wanted to annoy him. The rest of the morning passed in equal silence. After eating, they showered, dressed, and got ready separately, giving the other as much space and privacy as possible in Kakashi's small apartment. Finally, they were ready to leave, both walking out into the cool morning air. Almost immediately, they were greeted by an enthusiastic Kakashi. They turned to see Guy making his way up to them. Behind him walked another man and a woman. The man had a beard and a cigarette hanging from his mouth. The woman had black hair that touched her shoulders. Her eyes were as red as the lipstick she wore. Both of them were obviously shinobi. Kakashi. Stop and talk for a moment. We are never going to get to the Hokage, Kakashi muttered tiredly as they approached. Naime stifled a laugh. He shot her a glare. It's good to see you back to normal, Naime. Guy said excitedly, giving her a thumbs up. I was beginning to think you'd stay a fox forever. She gave him a nervous laugh. That's partially inevitable, guy. Kakashi, we haven't seen you in a while, the woman said. We just wanted to make sure everything was going okay. We heard you're becoming a teacher. Quite the lifestyle change from Anbu, the man said, eyeing Naomi. Hi, I'm Asuma, he introduced himself, extending his hand to her. This is Kurenai. Naomi nervously took his hand. I'm Naomi, she told him. It's good to finally meet you, Kurenai told her. Guy kept telling us Kakashi was keeping some girl at his apartment, she joked. Ah, Naomi replied uncomfortably. Kakashi stiffened. We have an appointment to speak to the Hokage. We have to go, he said quickly, half pulling Naomi down the street before the three could say anything else. Hey, she cried, running to keep up with Kakashi's longer strides. Sorry, he apologized, not feeling a bit sorry. We really are running late now. Lord Hokage, Kakashi greeted. Naomi stood beside him. Kakashi, Naomi, good to see you both again. Sarutobi greeted cordially. Well, have you decided? He asked Naomi. She nodded. Yes. I'll work with your village on one condition. Sarutobi his head. Oh, what is that? She paused. Kakashi stays with me. Kakashi looked at her in surprise. He quickly caught the eye of Sarutobi. They were both thinking the same thing. She was becoming loyal to him. Why would you like him to stay with you? He asked. He won't be in Anbu much longer, if you didn't know. He'll have different responsibilities. And, I was under the impression yesterday you didn't like him. Not especially, she said bluntly. Kakashi frowned. That wasn't what he wanted her to say. He said he would teach me to read. Kakashi stays with me, she insisted. Teach you to read? We can arrange that. Sarutobi looked to Kakashi. Add reading and writing to the list of her training, he said seriously. He turned back to Naomi. In the meantime, we'll find a place for you to live and start a training regimen for you. You need to learn how to investigate Orochimaru and Shinju before you can go after them. She nodded. He smiled at her. I'm glad you've agreed to work with us. Now, if you would please go with Chiharu, she'll show you where to get started. I must speak to Kakashi in private for a few minutes. The door behind them opened and a blonde-haired woman entered, waiting in the doorway. Naomi looked to Kakashi, seemingly unsure. He nodded at her and she reluctantly left the room, following Chiharu. He watched her leave, the door closing with a soft click. Immediately Kakashi turned back to the Hokage. You seem to be making progress with her, Sarutobi commented. It would seem, he replied, thinking of how he liked the way she walked. I'm not sure how, but she's trusting me more often than not. That's good, that's good. Just keep it and I think she will be a very valuable ally. There's one issue though, Kakashi said, crossing his arms. Orochimaru left a mark on her hand before she turned into a fox. It's possible he may be using it to track her. Someone followed us last night, but she wouldn't tell me who. She could sense their chakra pattern. She could sense them. I didn't know she was even capable of sensing chakra patterns. He folded his hands under his chin. Neither did I until last night, he replied. She's convinced Orochimaru knows where she's hiding. I think whoever it was following us last night works for him and threatened her. Sarutobi hummed, thinking deeply. I am going to do what I can to remove the seal from her hand. It needs to be gone as soon as possible. I agree. He could be using it to manipulate her in ways we don't know yet, he said seriously. See that you remove that seal at once. We can't have Orochimaru knowing what we're up to. Kakashi nodded. Afterwards, keep getting Naomi to trust you. Do whatever you have to do. You're dismissed. Kakashi left the Hokage's office after a quick bow. He found Naomi waiting for him outside, sitting on a bench and eating an apple. There you are, Naomi said impatiently, standing. I wasn't even sure if you were still here at all. Give me your hand, he suddenly ordered, holding out his own. She gave him a quizzical look, but put her hand in his anyway, taking a loud bite out of her apple. The mark was still there, but it was slightly darker than before. Kakashi narrowed his eye. Come on, he said, keeping hold of her hand and walking forward. Let's take care of this seal once and for all. I feel sort of concerned that you have to drag me out into the forest to remove this, Naomi told Kakashi as he sat her down in a patch of grass. You're just going to have to trust me on this one, he said, walking a few feet away from her. I just want to make sure there's nothing to interfere, and if something happens where you go on a killing rampage again, I can stop you here before you hurt anyone else, Kakashi replied, lifting his headband and making symbols with his hands before putting them to the ground. Naomi felt his chakra circle around her, leaving a soft tingle on her skin. That was one time, she argued, and Orochimaru had control of me. And Orochimaru was the one who put that seal on you, he countered. She looked at the circle as he continued his work outside of it. Why so elaborate this time? She asked. You only had to touch me to get rid of the other one. I'm also making sure that there isn't anything else we need to worry about, he said. Now hold still. This will hurt a little. She shifted a moment before finally settling. Kakashi put his hand to the circle on the ground, the marks glowing a bright blue. The blue glowed intensely, blinding Kakashi for a moment. He was suddenly standing beside a river. In front of him, a very large man was scrubbing the hair of a young girl in the water. His hair was brown and scraggly, with a long beard to match. His clothes were bloodied with freshly seared wounds. He looked as if he had just fought a battle. Kakashi recognized the man from the last time he had accidentally entered Naomi's memories. The girl squirmed uncomfortably, telling him he was rubbing too hard. The water around her had turned dark red. Kakashi suddenly noticed she was bathing in her clothes, which were soaked in blood. He wondered why she had been covered in blood. I'm so sorry this happened, Naya, the man apologized softly, scrubbing her bloodied arm then dipping it into the water to rinse off. I will make sure this never happens again, he told her determinedly. Abba, does this mean we'll have to move again? She asked, scrubbing her chest with her other arm. He nodded. Most likely. We can stay with Shinju until we find another place. She crinkled her face. I don't like her. I know you don't, but you like Ryu, don't you? He asked with a small smile, gently scraping the blood out from beneath her fingernails. She blushed brightly. It'll be all right. It won't be for very long. She continued to frown. The vision blurred and a change of scenery. Kakashi watched the younger Naomi and Abba approach an ancient building. Naomi was wearing a clean set of clothes and Abba had patched his wounds. The building looked like a dojo, with its high walls, paper lanterns, and beautifully shingled roofs. They entered the front gate going up to the porch. As they approached, they heard shouting from the other side of the sliding paper door. The door suddenly slid open. A boy scrambled out onto the porch, falling into the dirt in front of the stairs. A woman with long dark hair and a jagged scar running down her face and neck stood seething in the doorway. Stupid boy, she spat, staring down at him as he sat up to face her. She looked up, suddenly noticing Abba and Naomi watching the two of them. Abba, she said, acknowledging him. What do you want? She asked bitterly. Naomi stood closer to Abba, holding onto the edge of his cloak. We'll speak in private, Shinju, he said, eyeing the boy. Away from the children. Is that what you call her? She asked, pointing to Naomi who was now hiding herself in his cloak. She doesn't belong with us. Shinju huffed. Fine. You're allowed inside. I don't like that fox stinking up my house. She looked down at the boy. Get up, Ryu. You bring shame to yourself. Immediately Ryu stood and began patting the dirt from his clothes. She turned around and headed inside, not waiting for Abba to follow her. Abba pried Naomi's fingers from his cloak, telling her to stay outside, and went after her. Naomi immediately ran to Ryu, who was wiping fresh blood from his lip. His blue eyes were filled with anger as he watched Abba follow after his mother. Are you okay? She asked him once the door was closed. It's nothing, he replied quickly, pushing her hand away. She frowned. Come on, she said, pulling on his other hand. Let's go play. Kakashi was suddenly watching a much older Naime run alone through a very rocky area. He could feel her anxiety and fear radiating through the memory. Somehow, he knew Orochimaru had been keeping her under close watch for the last few months, warning her that she was getting distracted from her true loyalty. She was running to warn Ryu before something happened to him. She had to warn Ryu that Orochimaru would kill him if they didn't stop seeing each other. She went past a small pond, going towards the tall rock formation that hid their personal meeting spot. Ryu, she called loud enough for him to hear her. Ryu looked up to the sound of his name and pushed himself off the rock he was leaning against. Naime's heart relaxed slightly at the sight of him, his handsome face forming a bright smile. Naya, he greeted, hugging her tightly. I got your message and brought this. He gestured to the sword hanging from his belt. What's wrong? He asked, sounding deeply concerned. He held her by her shoulders. You're shaking. Ryu, she started, forcing herself to look away from his blue eyes. We need to stop seeing each other for a little while. Orochimaru thinks I'm not loyal to him. He doesn't understand how my loyalty works. She held tightly to his arms, finally looking up into his face. He's going to kill you if he finds us together again. Funny, my mother said the same thing about you. This isn't a joke, Ryu. I'm not joking. She thinks I'm not serious enough about taking over for her all because I'm, according to her, too wrapped up with that fox, to care. He sighed heavily. I don't want to stop seeing you. We have to, Naime said forcefully, pushing his hands away. I'm sorry, Ryu, I really am. It's too dangerous. She felt her eyes burning from holding back her tears. He pulled her into an embrace, stroking her hair. Her arms went around his middle, holding him as tightly as she could. Everything about him was more than familiar to her. His scent, his touch, his strength, she could trace him all by memory. She didn't want to let go. Suddenly, a horrible sound rang in Naime's ears. Ryu had cried out in excruciating pain, releasing his hold on her, grasping at the blade that was now protruding from his chest. She jumped back with a scream in terror. Behind him, Naime saw Orochimaru pushing the blade up further under Ryu's ribs. He twisted, then ripped the sword out, leaving Ryu fall with a sickening thud. Naime screamed loudly. Ryu. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands hopelessly trying to cover his wounds to stop them from bleeding. I told you this would happen, Orochimaru said casually, flicking the blood off his blade. He was distracting you. He patted her shoulder as he began to walk away. I give you permission to bury him and mourn him for a day. After that, you're loyal to only me. She had hardly heard what Orochimaru had said as he left her alone with Ryu as he continued to bleed out. Kakashi was about to run after Orochimaru, his own anger burning against him, but Naime's cries brought him back to the scene in front of him. Ryu, please don't die. She pleaded desperately, gently turning him onto his back. His blood pooled around him, staining his and Naime's clothes. He gurgled as he tried to breathe, the blood flooding and dripping from his mouth. He tried to concentrate on her face, but his eyes wouldn't focus. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Ryu, stay with me. Desperately, she looked around. No one seemed to be nearby. She couldn't sense anyone either. This is all my fault. Ryu, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tears were freely flowing down her face, leaving streaks. He shuddered a final breath as Naime sensed his soul leave his body. His eyes had turned to the same color as the graying sky. Ryu, she cried. Somebody. She yelled to the rock formation around her as she held him to her chest. Somebody. Help. Please. Ryu. She rocked him in her arms, but he didn't stir again. Ryu, she repeated softly. I'm so sorry. She kissed his forehead, running her fingers through his black hair. The scene in front of Kakashi blurred and he found himself kneeling in the forest again. He blinked, staring at Naime in the middle of the circle he had created. She was sobbing into her hands, wailing horribly as she curled up on the ground. He felt weary from using his Sharingan, but got up and knelt down beside her in the circle. He wasn't sure why he was able to get into her memories every time he had removed a seal from her, but he had seen enough. This was exactly why she feared Orochimaru so much. He was absolutely ruthless. Kakashi picked her up and pulled her into a tight embrace. She didn't seem to mind, or notice, but continued to sob into his chest. It was much later in the day than he thought it was. Judging by the darkening sky above them, he had been removing Orochimaru's seal for hours. They sat in each other's arms for a long time while Naime calmed down. Eventually they sat in silence as the night began to surround them. Kakashi felt himself feeling worse and worse. His vision swirled and he felt sick to his stomach. Naime moved to let go of him, looking up at him. "Hey, Kakashi, are you okay?" He heard her ask, but his eyes drooped heavily. He felt himself falling forwards. When he awoke, Kakashi felt a cool cloth being pressed to his forehead. He opened his one eye to find he was back in his bedroom, suddenly aware his mask wasn't covering his face. Naime sat on the edge of his bed, balancing a bowl of water in her lap and gently dabbing the cloth to his forehead. Her eyes were puffy and red from crying. She didn't seem to care that she had taken his mask off while he was unconscious. He felt almost without it. "You were burning up," she told him softly, noticing he was awake. Fainted in the middle of the forest. He watched her for a moment, staring at her hands as she dipped the cloth into the water. She wrung it between her hands, letting the water drip out, and put the cloth back to his face. He was glad to see the mark was now gone from her hand. He saw his mask sitting on the floor beside the bed and attempted to sit up to retrieve it. His head spun. "Don't do that," she scolded, pushing him back down. "You must have used your Sharingan too much today. You need rest." "Why are you helping me?" he asked, settling back. "You said you didn't like me. What? Is that what you've been thinking about? You think I don't like you enough to leave you out in the middle of the woods with a fever?" She replied sharply, offended. "Besides," she continued, her voice turning soft, "you've seen something most people don't even know about." She stared at the bowl in her lap, avoiding looking Kakashi in the eyes. "And since you've helped me so much, I have to say, thank you, somehow, don't I?" He stared at her. He felt she was trying to be sincere, but it somehow felt weird hearing her say it. "Naime," Kakashi started, unsure of what to say next. "What happened after Orochimaru killed Ryu? What did you do?" he asked gently after a long silence had passed between them. She grimaced at the sound of their names, still avoiding his eye by focusing on the bowl. Kakashi thought she looked very small. "I did what I had to," she replied softly. "I took his body to Shinju. She of course blamed me for death of her son and used any torture method she could think of to hurt me, but not kill me." She took a deep breath, obviously fighting back more tears. "She held me for a week until I could escape. Orochimaru found me shortly after that and found more ways to experiment on me." Her hands began to shake so she held tighter to the bowl. "With everything I had seen and had done to me, it's a miracle I'm even alive." She paused. "I didn't even want to be alive without Ryu. It was too much. That's why you found me high that one night. I had been trying to drown it all out for months." She looked down at him. "Now you know why I didn't want to agree to help your Hokage." "I can't fight them, Kakashi," she said, shaking her head. "I can't." Kakashi was speechless. He wanted to say something comforting to her, but the words never made it past his lips. Her emotions were open and raw. Her pain still fresh as if it had only just happened. He looked her in the eyes, taking in every feeling she had. He wanted to hold her again, to stroke her hair, be close to her, but he stayed put. He knew how she felt. Rin's and Obito's deaths haunted his own dreams every night. He could imagine the guilt Naime likely felt thinking Ryu's death was her fault. Finally, Kakashi opened his mouth to speak, but she had already begun to leave. Anyway, she went on, removing the cloth from his forehead and putting it in the bowl. I'm staying with Kairi tonight, she said, quickly changing the subject. She stood. I imagine you can take care of yourself, no problem. Have a good night, Kakashi. She turned, hurrying to leave the room. Kakashi propped himself up on his elbows. Naime, wait. She paused in the doorway. Tomorrow, he said. She creased her eyebrows. Tomorrow we'll start reading. Naime nodded, trying to hide her sudden excitement. I'll be here early then, she said, exiting. Naime rubbed her face in frustration. I wish I already knew all this. She complained. You're not going to learn how to read in only a week, Naime, Kakashi told her, calmly. She rested her chin on the table. At least tell me I can quit writing lines. My hand hurts. He looked at the papers spread out in front of her, covered in her sloppy writing. It was surprisingly almost legible, but she was obviously still learning. Well, you aren't going to be writing mission reports anytime soon. She groaned, putting her face on the table. I forgot about those, she mumbled into the tabletop. Don't worry, he assured her. That won't be for a while anyway. Good. She sat up, looking at the clock on the wall. Are we done for today then? She asked. I'm meeting with Kurenai soon. Kakashi was still looking critically over her writing. Fix that, he said, pointing to a spot on the page. Why are you meeting with Kurenai? He asked. She's going to teach me chakra control, she replied, slowly and carefully moving her pencil to form the correct words. She offered, so I accepted. She thinks it may help me not get so overwhelmed when I walk in a crowd of people. She handed him the paper again. How's this? He took the paper from her. Better, he replied. I didn't realize she would have the time to train you and her other students as well, he commented. Hey, don't you have to meet your new students today? Naime asked. Kakashi glanced up at the clock. Not for another hour. Well, I'm going to go anyway, she said, getting up from the low table. I should be back tomorrow. He began to gather up the papers. See you then. Naime ran as fast as she could to where Kurenai was to meet her. Kurenai was standing beside a small pond when she greeted her. Orange and white koi fish swam in the water. Kurenai wasted no time to begin her first lesson. In order to have good chakra control, you should only mold as much chakra as you need to perform a given ability. Kurenai lectured Naime. If you mold more chakra than necessary, the excess chakra is wasted and you'll tire out faster from its loss. Right now, you seem to have very little to no chakra control. Your ability to sense others runs wild and makes you unable to focus on one individual. Naime looked down at her feet, unsure of herself, but she took a deep breath, and tried anyway. The rest of the afternoon, she spent with very wet feet, but Kurenai was kind enough to be patient with her. Naime was frustrated and tired, but did notice a little bit of progress before Kurenai decided they would try again in a couple of days. Go home and rest, she told her. You've done enough for today. For the next couple of days, try to control yourself from sensing anyone else's chakra. We'll keep going from there. She shook her hand. Good work today, she said with a smile. Naime walked back to Kairi's feeling exhausted. As she walked, she noticed quite a few rough-looking people skulking in entrances to alleyways and in doorways, smoking a cigarette or two. They all seemed like they were waiting for somebody or for something to happen. She quickened her stride. At the end of the road, she watched a man walk out of a bar, his arm around a brunette woman's shoulders. His red hair covered part of his face while he leaned in towards the brunette's ear, whispering something to her that made her giggle flirtatiously. Naime wasn't sure she recognized the man until he lifted his head up. She knew this man as a drug distributor for Shinju. His name was Akito. She then noticed the large bag the brunette woman carried at her side. His golden eyes drunkenly scanned the street, seemingly looking at the occupied alleys and doorways. In quiet shock, Naime quickly hurried to hide behind a bedsheet someone had left hanging outside. She didn't think Akito would know her since she had only seen him a few times, but she couldn't take that risk. She watched as the pair stopped by an alleyway. The woman unclasped the bag and reached inside, discreetly pulling out a small package. Akito took it from her and passed it to one of the men standing in the alley. The man gave him a small, closed sack. She could faintly hear the sound of coins coming from the sack as they hid it back into the woman's bag. They repeated this process, making their way down the street, only pausing every so often to glance around or to let a shinobi pass by. Naomi had seen enough. She had to tell someone about this immediately. She returned to her brisk walk back to Kairi's, thinking hard about what she had witnessed. She had seen these people exchange money for a small package, but she had no idea if the packages had held drugs or not. In her experience, they looked exactly like what she thought they were, drugs. More specifically a type of opium, but she had no way to confirm unless she had one herself. The idea of getting her own package of drugs was tempting, but she didn't want to repeat that addiction again. She shook her head. No, she needed to tell somebody about this. Her first thought was to tell Kakashi, but he wasn't in Anbu anymore, so what could he do? She then thought about immediately going and seeing the Hokage directly. He was the one who specifically asked for her help with the drug problem in the first place. Suddenly, she found herself in front of Kairi's clinic. With an annoyed sigh, she turned around and began walking towards the Hokage's office. As she walked, ideas bounced around in her head on how to get information from Akito. She figured she could use him to get an idea on Shinju's current whereabouts. She shot him a glare. None of your business. He put his hands up. Alright, I'll stop asking questions. They walked the rest of the way in silence. When they finally got to the Hokage's office, Naomi put herself ahead of Kakashi. It's really important I speak to him immediately, she said quickly, as she was allowed into the Hokage's office, the door shutting behind her. Kakashi held up the envelope he was carrying, but I just needed to give him this, he said tiredly. With a heavy sigh, Kakashi sat down on a bench in the hallway. He couldn't make out what Naomi was talking to Hiruzen about, but by their tones he assumed it was as important as she said. Hey, Kakashi. Long time, no see. Kakashi looked up from his seat. Oh, Iruka, how are you? I'm doing well, Iruka said, taking a seat beside him. I was just about to head home when I saw you sitting here. What are you doing? I'm turning in my last mission report for Anbu, he replied, showing him the envelope. Ah, I see. He suddenly seemed excited by something. Hey, I heard you started with your new students today. How'd that go? I failed them, he replied bluntly. Iruka blinked. You failed them. Kakashi nodded. Yes. Sent them back to the academy. Iruka stared at him in silent shock. They weren't working as a team, Kakashi explained simply. There's no room for those who think they can do everything by themselves. Iruka leaned back against the wall. Well, I guess that's something we'll have to emphasize more in training. Suddenly, the Hokage's office door opened and Naomi walked out. Kakashi and Iruka stood simultaneously. Naomi quickly glanced at Kakashi, meeting his eye. I'll see you later, Kakashi, she told him, hurriedly walking past the two of them. Whoa, Iruka said, his mouth gaped open, as they watched her leave. Where did you meet her? He asked, turning back to Kakashi. Anbu, he replied slowly, still looking in the direction she had left. He wondered why she was leaving in such a hurry. He shook his head. Anyway, I need to give this to the Hokage. Have a good night, Iruka. What? You're not going to tell me anything else about her? He replied, teasingly. She didn't even notice I was here. You had eyes on each other the whole time. I've never seen you that interested in a woman before. Kakashi looked at him. She can be a handful. Maybe I'll introduce you another time, but it's really not like that between us, he explained. I just teach her to read now. Iruka nodded, smiling, obviously not believing him. Nearly a month had passed, but Kakashi didn't see Naomi at all. She didn't show up for their normal morning reading lesson. Nor did he find her training with Kurenai. Apparently Naomi told Kurenai she was taking a short break and she would come back after a while. He decided to go to Kairi's to see if she knew Naomi's whereabouts, but she was evasive. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, Kakashi, Kairi assured him, setting a cup of tea on the table front of him in her kitchen. She's a grown woman who can take care of herself. Kakashi frowned. I have my doubts about that. Kairi sat across from him, taking her own teacup into both of her hands. If she was able to survive as long as she has with all the things she's been through, I'm sure she's okay now. The expression on her face didn't convince him whatsoever. Kairi, what's going on with her? I haven't seen her in practically a month and Kurenai said she's supposedly taking a break. I haven't seen her since she was talking to Hiruzen. Tell me what you know, he gently pressured her. Kairi loudly sipped her tea and avoided eye contact with him. Kairi. He pushed harder. What aren't you telling me? She set her tea down. I promise not to tell. She said, frustrated, her voice rising slightly. It's hard enough that you've been asking me about her for the last 3 weeks. I can only tell you what I've told you already. The Hokage has her working on an extremely secret mission. Surely, you of all people would understand that. He sighed heavily. He did understand. But have you seen her at least? Kairi frowned, leaning back in her chair. Yes, she said decidedly. I have seen her. She's doing just fine, she said before he could ask. She paused. Kakashi-san, you don't need to worry about her. Naya is safe. She reassuringly put her hand over his. I'll let you know if I think she's in trouble and could use your help. He didn't like the sound of that. She doesn't have somebody with her? He asked, surprised. She's by herself. She shrugged. I'm only telling you what I've been allowed to, Kakashi, she said tiredly. How do you know all this anyway? He asked, finally taking a sip of his now cold tea. Kakashi, I have patients to attend to, Kairi said impatiently, standing quickly. She picked up her empty teacup. If you want to know anything, I suggest you find her yourself and ask her directly. She went to put her cup in the sink. Kakashi stood as well, downing the rest of his drink. Thank you for the tea, he said as he left her apartment without another word. It was only a few days after his visit with Kairi that she came to him, running up to him in the village square. Come with me, she ordered urgently, pulling him by his arm away from people. Kairi, what's going on? He asked concernedly, once they could talk in private. She adjusted her glasses. It's Naya, she started in a hushed voice. She's getting confirmation on Shinju's location. Kakashi blinked. What? How? From whom? Kairi glanced around before speaking again. I told you I would let you know when I thought she was in danger. I think by getting this information from her current source may result badly. You think she's going to go after Shinju alone? He asked. She's terrified of her. Kairi nodded. I was surprised too. She asked for my help and to not tell you anything. She didn't want to concern you. Well, she has, Kakashi said irritably. Kairi continued. Naya's been meeting with a man named Akito. He frequents a bar just a few blocks from my clinic. He's one of Shinju's main drug distributors. For the last month or so, she's been working on getting close to him to extract information from him. So far, it's been successful. So far, Kairi nodded again. She's been extracting a lot of information from him. As long as she keeps him drunk and happy, she can get him to tell her anything. She looked at Kakashi seriously. I want you to be there to protect her. I'm afraid something is going to go wrong tonight. Why me? He asked. She would recognize my chakra before I even entered the bar. Maybe so, Kairi said thoughtfully, putting her hand under her chin, but she's been training to control it, right? Regardless, I want you to be there. She put her hands on her hips, staring intensely at him. He crossed his arms. It doesn't seem like you're giving me much of a choice. I'm not, Kairi replied, moving past him. Come on, let's get you a good disguise so nobody recognizes you in the bar. When they arrived at Kairi's apartment, she rushed him upstairs to a spare bedroom. Seo's gone for the weekend, so I don't suppose she would mind if we borrowed some of her makeup. She turned around to face him, holding a small pile cosmetics in her hands. Sit there, she ordered, nodding towards a chair in front of a table and mirror. Kakashi sat while Kairi placed the bottles and brushes on the table. Well, take off your mask, silly. She said. Can't exactly give you a good disguise if people can't see your face. They'd know who you are in an instant. But my eye, Kakashi started as he pulled his mask down from his face. Simple fix, she said, waving her hand. He frowned, but let Kairi apply different creams to his face. She especially worked to cover the scar on his eye, carefully blending in the colors to make it look natural. She handed him a small container. Put these on your eyes. They may be a little uncomfortable at first, but these eye drops help. After several agonizing attempts to put the colored contacts in his eyes, he was finally able to blink them into place. Kairi helped him put on a brown wig, making sure all of his silver hair was hidden beneath it. Once she found an outfit for him, Kakashi changed into it. When he finished, he let Kairi back into the room. Wow, she exclaimed, admiring the costume. I really have outdone myself this time. Though, your disguise was definitely much harder to put together than Naya's. She knows how to put on her own makeup. Kakashi looked at himself in the mirror. He was first impressed with how Kairi had managed to cover his scar and his Sharingan eye. His eyes were now green and his hair was brown and curly. He wore a dusty-colored poncho that was much too large for him with a matching baggy brown shirt and pants. He had left his gloves and sandals on. Nayame has a disguise too. Yes, but hers is much simpler. You'll find Naya in no time, I assure you. Alright then, since I know how to spot Nayame, then how do I know I've spotted Akito? Kakashi asked, adjusting the poncho. From what she's told me, Kairi said, putting away the makeup into a bag, Akito has dark red hair and golden eyes. Sometimes wears glasses, I think. She paused to push her own glasses up her nose. That's all she told me. I would assume he'll just look like a shady character altogether, she surmised with a shrug. Thank you, Kairi. You've been a great help, he said, giving her a small peck on the cheek. Kairi playfully punched his arm. Go away. You got work to do. She laughed. Kakashi entered the bar, glancing around at all the people. His disguise gave him little comfort, even though Kairi insisted he looked unrecognizable. At the bar, he spotted a man with red hair and golden eyes who was staring into his drink. Akito. Kakashi ordered a drink and went to sit down at a nearby table. A woman with long, silky black hair made her way up to Akito. Her cherry red kimono was purposely slit up her legs, exposing her pale skin. She had adorned gold jewels in her hair and around her neck and on her ears. Her face was covered in heavy makeup, but she still looked very beautiful. Kakashi almost didn't realize it was Nayame. He took a long gulp from his drink, the alcohol burning his throat, as he watched Nayame put her arms around Akito's shoulders. She whispered something into his ear, playfully teasing him and making him smile. Kakashi didn't like the way he was looking at her. Irritated, he took another gulp of his drink. Come on, he heard her say as she grabbed his hand. Let's go upstairs, she said enticingly. Kakashi knew it was an act on her part, but he felt increasingly uncomfortable and angry. He watched her lead him to the stairs on the far side of the bar as someone else sat beside him at his table. A blonde woman, who was dressed similar to Nayame, but wore a revealing pink kimono, was staring at him. I saw you starin' at her. No use tryin' to get with that woman. She told him. She refuses to get with anybody else but him. No matter how much money she's offered. She shrugged. But, she said, leaning closer to Kakashi, if you're looking for a good time, I can show you a night you won't forget. She batted her eyes at him, pressing herself against him. Kakashi moved away from the blonde woman. No, thanks, really, he said, standing from the table. If he wasn't uncomfortable before, he certainly was now. No thanks, he repeated, quickly dashing across the bar floor towards the stairs. Once upstairs, he found a long hallway with closed sliding doors on either side. His heart pounded loudly in his chest. He wasn't sure what he was going to do once he found Naime, but he had to decide quickly. One of the sliding doors was cracked open. Through the crack he could see Naime straddling Akito's lap. They were at a standstill, each with a kunai in hand. Naime held hers tightly against Akito's ribs, while he had one at her throat. Their eyes were intensely glaring at each other, waiting for the other to make the first move. I should have known you were only getting close to me to get information. Did the Hokage send you? Akito asked her, deciding to be the Leaf Village's lapdog. Ha. That's very low for a fox like you, Naya. Surely. Abba taught you better. I actually sent myself, she replied shortly, tightening the kunai against his ribs and drawing a bit of blood. Her voice was cold. Where is Shinju? Akito hitched his breath in pain then laughed. You mean you don't remember where she is? It hasn't changed since you got Ryu killed. Naime pressed the kunai into his ribs, drawing more blood. Then why should I waste any more of my time questioning you? She hissed as he pressed his kunai harder to her throat in response. Before he could stop himself, Kakashi had opened the door and entered the room. Naime and Akito immediately turned towards the intruder. Who the hell? Akito started, but was quickly silenced by a kick to the face, knocking him out cold. Naime was now standing. Having jumped from his lap, she looked down at Akito, then at the intruder. Her kunai still in hand, she went to attack Kakashi, but he took hold of her wrists before she could do anything. Hey, Kakashi said, disarming her and letting the kunai fall to the floor. He had accidentally pushed her against the wall with a loud thud. It's me. She continued to struggle against him, so he held her wrists above her head. He tore the brown wig from his head, revealing his silver hair. It's me, Kakashi. Naime paused, staring at him. Kakashi, what the are you doing here? She spat angrily. He was going to kill you. He argued. Kairi told me what you've been up to. She said she didn't feel good about tonight, and I think she was right. Akito caught on to me a while ago, Naime told him simply. I was waiting for him to make a move. And are you wearing makeup? She asked, noticing the makeup he was wearing that disguised his face. And you were just going to let him hurt you? You don't think that's a problem? Kakashi countered, ignoring her question. Why the hell would you let him do that? And on another note, why the hell did you not tell me you were doing this? You shouldn't have done this alone. You aren't trained enough. Your Hokage approved it, so I don't see an issue. Naime glared at him. That's besides the point, Kakashi said, exasperated. Oh, then what is it? What is the point, Kakashi? She tried to move her hands out from beneath his grip. Let me go. Reluctantly, Kakashi let her go. He glanced down at Akito, who was still very much unconscious. What do we do with him? He asked. Leave him here, Naime said, stepping over him to head towards the door. Anbu will be by soon to take him into custody. She looked back to Kakashi. Your disguise is ridiculous, she told him bluntly. Tell that to Kairi, he said, picking up the brown wig from the floor. We should probably get going. Does Anbu know where to get Akito? I'll let them know, Naime told him, picking up the kunai. I'll come with you, he said, putting back on the wig. I can do it myself, she argued, straightening up. I'm not letting you do this alone anymore, Kakashi replied firmly, adjusting his wig into place. You haven't been trained nearly enough. You shouldn't have been doing it on your own in the first place. Why are you so concerned about me? Naime questioned, annoyed. I was doing fine by myself. Like hell you were. I'm only concerned because you don't seem to care about your own life, so I'm going to do it for you. Kakashi yelled, exasperated. Naime stared silently at him, her hands falling slowly to her sides. You keep thinking you have to do these things to prove yourself, but you don't. Not to me. he added softly. He stepped towards her. Let me help you capture Shinju. You don't have to do it alone. You can trust me on this. She continued to stare at him, seemingly unsure about his offer. But don't you have students now? I failed them for the exact reason you're being difficult right now, he answered quickly. If you're going to help Konoha, you have to abide by our rules. Teamwork is one of them. Naomi was quiet. We should go, she muttered. Kakashi nodded in agreement, following her downstairs and out of the bar. He waited for her as she contacted Anbu to inform them where Akito was before she meeting him further down the road. Come on, he said when she approached, let's go get cleaned up. Here, Kakashi said, handing Naomi a towel, to wipe the makeup off your face. He didn't dislike the makeup on her, but it definitely made her look much different. Thank you, she replied softly, taking the towel from him. You should take yours off too. Right. He sat on the edge of the bathtub and watched as she took off the gold jewelry she had in her hair and on her neck and ears, setting them carefully on the counter by the bathroom sink. He had removed most of his disguise already, leaving his pants and shirt. He had gone back to his normal eye color, his left eye closed to hide the Sharingan, his face hidden by a mask. You said that the Hokage approved of you doing this on your own, Kakashi started, but did he approve the part of the plan to dress like a prostitute? She turned around to face him, wiping her face with the towel. I suggested it, she admitted. Thought it would be easier to get Akito to open up to me. And did it work? Does it bother you if it did? I know where Shinju is. And I know much more than that. She turned back to the mirror, wiping at some particularly stubborn eyeliner. I know how she's planning to keep growing her business. If we stop her, the whole organization falls apart. And you think you know how to stop her? Kakashi questioned. She turned to face him again. If we can kill her, it'll be over. He looked at her in her eyes. Their sharp brown color was full of a fighting spirit. He couldn't help but feel that her eagerness to carry out this plan had something to do with revenge, but he wasn't able to entertain the thought long. Besides, your Hokage wanted me to help solve the drug problem in the village, so any plan I came up with he was game, Naomi added. She stared at him, trying to decide what she should tell him. Finally, she decided to tell him everything. She told him about seeing Akito leave the bar with a woman and distribute drugs to the people waiting in the darkened alleys. She told him about the conversation she had with the Hokage on how to gain Akito's trust. With Kairi's help, she was able to get a good disguise and to infiltrate herself among the other prostitutes to get close to Akito. Akito was intrigued by her almost instantly. She had managed to keep him interested in her enough to give her information without sacrificing too much of her dignity. When she had asked him too many questions, he had begun to be suspicious of her. It was just before Kakashi had intruded on them that Akito had admitted to her that he knew who she was and what she was up to. I don't know if he had figured out who I was soon enough to inform Shinju, so as far as I know, she's unaware I'm working with the Leaf against her, Naomi finally finished. I'm sorry for not telling you, but I honestly didn't want you to know. Well, you had Kairi concerned for sure, and she knew what you were doing. Kakashi rubbed his chin, thinking. Now that you know where Shinju is, when did you plan on going after her? As soon as possible, she replied. Can't have her running the slums of this village anymore, can we? Kakashi shook his head. No, I guess we can't. He stood up and stretched, glancing at the clock. It was close to 1 in the morning. I suppose we'll have to start tomorrow then. We'll talk to the Hokage first thing in the morning. Right. Oh, hang on, she said, stopping him before he could leave the bathroom. You still have a bit of makeup on you, she told him, gently pulling his mask down and holding the towel to his face. Hold still. He obeyed. Carefully, she held his face while she carefully wiped around his eye, slowly revealing his scar again. When she finished, they continued to stare at each other, almost unsure of whether to look away. They moved closer to each other. Gently, their lips touched. Kakashi liked this particular kiss much better than the last one she had given him many months ago. It had been forceful and almost painful, but this was different. He held her face in his hands, deepening the kiss. Naomi couldn't remember the last time someone had kissed her this well, or this intimately. Something told her they should stop, but they kept going, getting closer to each other. Kakashi had pressed her against the counter behind her. Suddenly, she was putting her hands beneath his shirt, feeling the muscles over his stomach and his back. With one hand, he explored the exposed part of her leg, not realizing he was lifting her towards him. His other hand was placed on her back. A small voice told him to stop, that he was manipulating her and using her loyalty against her, but he ignored it. His brain was going a million miles an hour, not totally in control of what his body was doing. Kakashi, Naomi breathed out when she realized she was sitting on the counter with her legs around his middle. Kakashi, she repeated, maybe we shouldn't do this where we could accidentally break your sink. I have to ask you something, he said, unsure of how to explain himself. He sat on the edge of the bed. Naomi sat up beside him. What is it? Are you nervous? She sounded almost amused. It's not that, he replied, though that was a lie. He had no idea what he was doing and was hoping she wouldn't notice, though she probably already had and was kind enough not to say anything. He had a vague idea on what he was doing from some books he read, but wasn't sure how accurate they were. He also wasn't sure how to explain what he was thinking. He felt like she was manipulating him. He didn't like that at all. We have to stop. We can't keep going with this. Why? What do you mean? She asked, looking confused and almost hurt. Kakashi suddenly felt horrible, but continued to speak. We can't do this. It's not right. He had never told her about the deal he had made with Hiruzen to get her loyalty to him. This wasn't what he had thought was going to happen. Naya, we can't go any further, he added softly. It shouldn't have even gotten this far. I'm sorry. She shook her head, looking away from him. No, you're right, she said bluntly, getting up from the bed and dressing quickly. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't have come home with you. Hurriedly, she ran out of the room. Naya, wait, Kakashi called after her. Naomi. He caught her by the arm before she could leave his apartment. Don't touch me, Kakashi. Naomi shouted. He instantly let her go. She stared at him icily. I'll see you tomorrow, she said tensely, before swiftly turning around and leaving his apartment. Kakashi stood at his door, staring after her as she walked away into the night. Kakashi awoke the next morning, feeling like he hadn't slept at all. Despite his sour mood, the sun shone brightly through the crack in his curtains, illuminating the room. A soft breeze blew gently into the room from the open window. His clothes were still strewn across the floor from the night before. He turned onto his back and stared at the ceiling, thinking about what had happened the night before. Frustrated, he sat up, putting his feet on the floor. He wasn't sure what to think about Naomi. He couldn't tell what she actually thought of him or was just using him for something. A sudden creak coming from his open window pulled him out of his thoughts. He turned towards the noise only to find Guy sitting in the window frame. Kakashi jumped back with a yelp, quickly covering himself with the blanket. There you are, Guy exclaimed. We've been looking for you all morning. He said as if that explained why he was crouching in Kakashi's bedroom window. What are you doing here? Kakashi asked, annoyed at the sudden intrusion. He leaned down to grab a mask from the floor, quickly covering his face. Guy jumped into the room, straightening up. You've got some doctor in a panic, he told him. Kairi, I believe her name is. Kakashi grabbed for a pair of pants, trying to cover himself the best he could as he dressed. Kairi, why? Is something wrong? Guy shrugged. Said you didn't check in with her last night. Neither you or Naomi. He watched Kakashi for a moment as he put on a shirt. Since when do you sleep? He asked uncomfortably. I don't, he replied shortly. I must have gotten hot last night. Guy shook his head. Okay. Well, you better get to Kairi soon. She's really worried about the both of you. He turned towards the window, but suddenly stopped. I should use your door, shouldn't I? Kakashi nodded. Please, he insisted, leading Guy out of his apartment. I'll see you later, Kakashi. Guy said. When you find the time, we must fight. After all, you are my rival. Kakashi nodded unenthusiastically. Yeah, we'll have to do that soon. Bye. He shut the door. Kakashi went back to his bedroom and shut the window. His bed was a mess of sheets and pillows. He grabbed the edge of the blankets, pulling them taut to get rid of any wrinkles. Faintly, he could smell Naime's sweet perfume wafting from the fabric. With a heavy sigh, he decided he probably shouldn't leave Kairi waiting too much longer. No note, no quick, hey, we're fine. Everything turned out okay. Kairi paced back and forth in her tiny kitchen while Kakashi sat at the table, looking sheepish. I told you I had a bad feeling about last night. And when you didn't come back I was worried sick. Kairi, it's okay, he tried to assure her. Naime was fine. We took care of Akito. He's in Anbu custody now. Well, that's just great to hear. Kairi said, pausing to put her hands on her hips. And neither of you thought it would have been a good idea to let me know that. Happened the night before. Kairi listened intently. What am I supposed to do? He asked. Well, when you find her, I suggest talking to her about whatever it is that's going on between the two of you, Kairi replied, sitting up a little straighter in her chair. Figure out what that is and go from there. Kairi had told Kakashi he needed to find Naime before the day was over or she would string him up by the village gate. He wasn't quite sure where he was supposed to start looking for her, but he needed to go talk to the Hokage first to inform him on what happened with Akito before going out to look for her. When he arrived to Hiruzen's office, he heard Naime's voice through the door. He took a deep breath before knocking. Her voice stopped. Who is it? Hiruzen called out. It's me, Kakashi, he answered. Enter. He opened the door, seeing Naime standing beside Hiruzen's desk. She wouldn't look at him. I'm sorry, he apologized, looking from her to the Hokage. I didn't mean to interrupt. Nonsense, Hiruzen said, waving his hand. Naime was telling me about what happened last night with Akito. I trust you know about that now. I told him everything from the beginning, Naime answered before Kakashi could. She stole a glance towards him. Thought he should know. Very well then, Hiruzen said, folding his hands in front of him. Now that we have Akito in custody, we can gain more information from him to properly plan an attack against Shinju. We have enough information, Naime interjected. That's what I was doing for the past month. I may not have the same training your shinobi do, but I still got plenty of information from him. I'm not denying what you did was useful, Hiruzen replied calmly. There is likely more than he ever told you. She huffed. Maybe we can still formulate a plan with what we have, Kakashi suggested. If there's anything questionable, we'll find out the truth. We'd be wasting our time, she replied, crossing her arms. By the time we fact-check everything, Shinju would have moved on. I say we need to start as soon as possible before it's too late for us to even try. We need to start now. Who do you suggest would be able to take down Shinju with the information we have? Hiruzen asked. Me, Naime said without hesitation. I know more about her and everything she does better than anybody here. Let me do it. Hiruzen looked to Kakashi. What do you think, Hitaki? I'll go with her, he replied. She turned to him. If there's going to be anybody to go with her, it needs to be me. Just a two-man team. It would have to be. Scope the place out first and then send in a larger group to take her down, Kakashi suggested. I can take her down, Naime insisted. I know you can, Hiruzen replied patiently, but you mustn't let your emotions get ahead of logical order. He looked between the two of them. I'll send you out as a two-man team to get a few days head start. I'll send a group to go after you. Be sure to stay in contact as much as possible. We'll head out as soon as we're ready, Kakashi said, turning to her. We'll get supplies and be on our way. Hiruzen nodded. Be aware, he warned. Shinju will have many spies in the area that will alert her of your presence. Stay sharp. This is a dangerous mission. We'll be vigilant, Naomi assured him. Kakashi and Naomi left the Hokage's office together. They were silent until the door was shut behind them. Kairi was worried about you, Kakashi started. Where did you go last night? None of your business, Naomi said shortly, walking quickly towards the exit. He followed close beside her. And if she's worried that much, I'll see her before we leave. Fine. And you aren't going off by yourself this time. This isn't like with Orochimaru and getting your Kitsunebi back. Shinju wants you dead, Kakashi replied. No more than Orochimaru does, she said curtly. She just has better protection. He grabbed her hand, stopping her quick strides. What? She growled, but she didn't remove her hand from his. Remember when you helped us find those children? I had told you no games. Same rules apply here. She was glaring at him, but he continued. We track down where Shinju is hiding, we observe her while we wait for the rest of the team to show up, then, and only then, will we take her down for good. No games. What makes you think I'm playing you? Naomi asked. You're after revenge. Probably even more so than you were with Orochimaru. He's a lost cause, but you can still get even with Shinju. Am I right? He looked down at her. She didn't reply, still glaring at him. I don't know what's going on in that head of yours, he continued, but I need a partner I can trust on this mission. Don't leave me behind. She paused, her mood suddenly changing. After last night, I think I'll have to trust you. You're only the second man to see me nearly, she said playfully, removing her hand from his to continue walking. Kakashi was glad his mask could hide his reddening face. All I ask is that you be extremely careful, Kairi urged Naomi, uncrossing her arms as her eyes turned from white to their normal yellow. I can tell a difference in your Kitsunebi over the last several months. It's subtle, but it is getting fainter. She returned her glasses to her face. What you're about to do is dangerous, but if you must use your Kitsunebi, use it only in an emergency and use it sparingly. Kairi's warning echoed over and over in Naomi's head. It made her anxious to use her Kitsunebi at all, even if she was in real danger. Any confidence she may have had before leaving to go after Shinju was fading fast. She and Kakashi had been traveling for barely 4 hours. Kakashi felt like they hadn't made much progress anywhere. They had hardly spoken a word to each other since they left the Leaf Village. He walked behind her, following where she was leading, but she was completely lost in her own thoughts. Hey, Naomi, you do know where you're going, right? Kakashi eventually asked, breaking the silence between them. Naomi. He caught up beside her. Hey, Naomi. She looked up at him, seeming surprised that he was next to her now. Huh, where are we going? He asked. You do know where you're heading, right? Of course I do, she replied incredulously. Do you? He asked. We've passed the same rock formation a good 4 times within the last hour. He pointed to a set of rocks several yards away. What's the deal? Sorry. She apologized half-heartedly. Come on, he said, let's take a break and eat something. They went and sat on the nearby rocks, each pulling out a lunch of rice balls and dried berries. They ate in silence. Kakashi couldn't take the quiet much longer. Naomi, about last night. We don't have to talk about it, Kakashi, she said shortly, taking a large bite out of a rice ball. I think we should, he insisted. He felt so awkward and uncomfortable, but felt like they needed to clear the air between them. She swallowed the bite of rice with a bit of difficulty. We had a spontaneous, intense make-out, Kakashi, what more is there to talk about? It happened, now just forget about it. It didn't mean anything. He creased his eyebrows. Didn't mean anything, he repeated. We both were drinking last night, so something foolish was bound to happen, she continued without looking at him. I had 1 drink last night and that certainly wasn't enough to get me even tipsy. I don't know how many drinks you had, but you didn't act like you weren't sober, he argued. What do you want from me, Kakashi? She demanded suddenly. Do you want me to confess my undying love for you or something. I only want a straight answer, he replied, calmer than he actually felt. Whatever happened between us last night has an explanation. You used me to try to make yourself feel better and got angry with me when I stopped it. Whatever the reason behind it, you don't have to tell me now, but just try talking to me next time before it gets physical. Naomi was still, staring at him. She wanted to continue arguing with him, but realized it wasn't worth the trouble. Fine, she muttered, turning back to her rice ball. She was more annoyed than anything of his ability to read her like a book. Was that all you wanted to talk about? She asked, taking a much smaller bite this time. He shook his head before tossing a couple of berries into his mouth. You're worried about your kitsunebi, aren't you? He asked between chewing. She nodded. Rightfully so, I think. I'm afraid to even use it, she whispered. It's the only thing that's keeping me alive. I wouldn't worry about it now. If we get into a tight spot, I'll do my best to keep you from having to use it at all, he assured her. Thanks, she replied, giving him a small smile. They finished their lunch and started their journey again. When they stopped for the night, Naomi told Kakashi they had made good progress. We should be in Shinju's territory by tomorrow afternoon at the earliest, she said, sitting on an overturned log. From there we can stake out and watch for her while we wait for the others. Kakashi nodded, pulling out a small tackle box he kept in his pack. I'm going to see if there's any fish in that river, he said, breaking off a long branch from a nearby tree. He took a kunai knife and cut off the extra sticks, giving them to Naomi to use to start a campfire. From his tackle box, he took out a small spool of clear fishing line, cut off a long piece, and wrapped it tightly on one end of the stick. On the other end of the line, he tied a small metal hook with a small weight attached above it. He stood at the edge of the water and cast the line upstream. After nearly an hour, Kakashi managed to catch 2 good-sized fish for them to eat. He brought them over where Naomi was sitting in front of the fire she had built. She had a small book open on her lap. Her face was skewed in intense concentration as she focused on trying to understand what she was reading. Dinner, Kakashi announced, holding up the fish he caught. She looked up from the book. Great. I'm starving. What are you reading? He asked, putting the fish on sticks to cook by the fire. Well, she huffed, flipping a page in frustration, I'm trying. I only recognize a few characters, so I'm missing quite a bit of the story. Let me see, he said, sitting beside her. Much to her surprise, Kakashi had snatched the book from her hands, closing it with a loud snap. Hey, she exclaimed. What's the deal? Did you get this out of my pack? He asked. She nodded, unsure of his odd behavior. You don't need to read this, he said quickly, shoving the book back into his pack. I'll get you better books. She put her hands on her hips. Then why are you reading them if they're not any good? Trust me, you wouldn't like them, he insisted. She frowned. Fine. She looked at the fire, putting her elbows on her knees and her face in her hands. Keep your porn away from me then. I don't need to read that garbage. It's just a bunch of unrealistic expectations anyway. He frowned, but kept silent, attending to the fish. Once they finished their meal, they sat back by the fire as the night grew darker. He was watching her quietly, as she looked up to the stars between the openings in the trees. Can I ask you something? He asked, his voice cutting over the noise of the chirping crickets and the river that flowed nearby. Depends on what it is, she replied, still staring up at the stars. Tell me about Abba, he said gently. It seems easier for you to talk about him than Ryu. She took a deep breath and sighed, taking a moment to think about her answer. In short, she started, looking over to him, he was the only father I ever knew. My earliest memories start with him finding me wandering in some burnt-down village. She shrugged. I don't know anything prior to that, whoever my real parents are, if I had any family, or even a life before Abba. He always told me he speculated they were killed during the war, but I have no memory so I assume he was right. How old were you? He asked, poking a stick into the fire. She thought for a second. I think I was maybe 10. Fairly young. If anybody else had found me, I probably would have been sold to human traffickers. I was with him for about 5 years. Her voice trailed off, her face dropping quickly. What happened to him? Kakashi asked softly after she hadn't said anything for a while. Aba's gone, she answered in a small voice. He apparently died of some sickness that had been spreading around the area, but I think Shinju had been slowly poisoning him with something. I took care of him until he died, so I had time to say my goodbyes to him. Is that another reason you want revenge against Shinju? You think she murdered him? Kakashi asked. Naomi nodded. I know she did. She murdered him to get rid of him to indirectly get rid of me. She didn't approve that he kept me around after he found me. And she didn't like Aba's competition against her authority. It's because of her that I got caught up with Orochimaru after Aba died. Briefly, she told him how Orochimaru had first approached her, asking her if she was the thieving kitsune he had heard about. I also think Shinju told him about me, but I'm not too sure on that one. That's a lot to speculate about one person, Kakashi told her, his eyebrows raised slightly. You don't believe me? She asked. He shook his head. No, I do believe you. It's just a lot. You're telling me. They were quiet again. Kakashi pulled out an empty scrap of paper, writing a message by the firelight. Naomi watched over his shoulder curiously. As he wrote, he explained every character and what they meant. Eventually, Naomi stood up and stretched. We should think about getting some sleep, she said, trying to suppress a yawn. I can take first watch. Are you sure? He asked. Yeah, she said, waving her hand. Go ahead and sleep. I'll wake you up if a few hours. Besides, if anybody is nearby, I'll sense them before they can get too close. Kakashi had a weird feeling about letting her take first watch, but eventually decided he wouldn't have much of a choice either way. One of them was going to have to stay awake for one half of the night. Let me send this message to the Hokage first, he said, pulling a small scroll out of one of the pockets on his vest. Naomi watched in amazement when a small dog wearing a leaf headband and a blue vest popped up on the seal from the paper. Ah, Pakun. Good to see you again, Kakashi greeted. It has been a while, Pakun said in a much deeper voice than Naomi thought would come from such a small dog. He sniffed the air then looked directly at her. A fox, he said, sounding confused. She's a friend, a kitsune, Kakashi told him, holding out the paper he had written on earlier, which was now folded and sealed. Take this to the Hokage for me. Tell him we should be in Shinju's territory by tomorrow. We'll be heading through the mountains in the north, Naomi added before the dog could leave. Shinju's home is in the middle of the range. You're not planning for something to go wrong, are you? Pakun asked distrustingly. No, she replied sheepishly. It's just a precaution. Pakun huffed and took the paper from Kakashi. He gave another quick glance at Naomi, then vanished with a small cloud of smoke. I didn't know you could summon dogs, Naomi said. I have quite a few dogs actually, Kakashi replied, pulling a sleeping mat out of his pack and spreading it on the ground. They're my ninkin. I use them on special occasions to help me on missions. They're very skilled in combat and tracking. I've never seen you summon them before, she pointed out. He shrugged. I don't summon them unless I feel it's absolutely necessary. That's fair. He finished setting up his sleeping mat and laid down to sleep. After what only seemed like a few minutes, Naomi was already shaking his shoulder to wake him for his turn. Just as the sun was beginning to peek through the trees, Naomi was already awake before Kakashi could bother waking her. We need to move, she said urgently, hurriedly folding up her sleeping mat. We're close enough to Shinju's territory that we shouldn't stay in this area much longer. Kakashi helped her clean their area, putting out the final embers of the fire. Why didn't you tell me about this last night? He asked. Because I didn't sense anybody nearby last night, she informed him. Come on, we need to hurry. Naomi led Kakashi along the river's edge, only pausing for a few minutes to scarf down a quick breakfast. They continued to travel at a quickened pace until Naime finally slowed down to a stop. Where to now? Kakashi asked, looking around. The river was long gone and the trees were getting thinner and far between. They were now standing at the bottom of a rocky mountainside. We go up, Naime answered him, taking a deep breath before starting up the mountain. Kakashi followed after her. A couple of hours later, they stopped for a quick break. We're almost there. We've made better time than I thought, Naime told Kakashi, taking a seat on the rocky ground. Sweat was dripping down her face as she took a drink of water from a canteen. Over that other mountain is Shinju's home. Kakashi took a drink from his own canteen as he viewed the land below. Do you sense anybody nearby? He asked, looking to her. She shook her head before taking another sip of water. If I did, I would let you know. Whoever it was behind us this morning must have lost track of us somehow. He nodded, looking back to the trees at the bottom of the mountain. By the way, Naime began while closing her canteen, who's Rin? You kept saying that name last night while you were sleeping. It seemed like you were having a bad dream. Kakashi immediately looked at her instead of out towards the ground below. She was a teammate of mine, he said bluntly, turning away from her. I killed her. Naime was silent, staring up at him. Oh. Kakashi stared down at his right hand, clenching and unclenching his fist. Don't say that. He wasn't looking at her. I was only trying to, she started when she suddenly froze. She turned her voice to a whisper. Kakashi, get away from the edge. Quickly. Hide. They hid behind some rocks that formed a small crevice in the mountain that was just large enough for them to squeeze into it uncomfortably. Several intense minutes passed until they heard groups of footsteps surrounding their hiding spot. Kakashi could feel Naime become increasingly tense beside him. Both of them quieted their breathing, not daring to move and accidentally make a sound. From their hiding spot, she could barely see through the entrance of the crevice. Now, I know I heard somebody over here. A man's voice said. Briefly, Naime could see a head with yellow hair, searching around the spot where she was just sitting. Slowly and carefully, Kakashi reached up to raise his headband to uncover his eye. They can't have gone far. A woman's voice said. Search thoroughly. Find them. A group of voices shouted their compliance. Naime stiffened, suddenly gripping tightly to Kakashi. Her eyes were now wide with fear. Shinju. He squeezed her hand gently, staring out the entrance. Neither of them made a sound. All of a sudden, the entrance was blocked and a much brighter light was shining in their eyes. Hey, in here, I found somebody, a voice shouted. Hands reached in and dragged the two of them out of the crevice and pushed their faces into the dirt. Immediately their hands were tied behind their backs and they were forced to sit up. They confiscated of all their weapons and their packs were tossed aside after being emptied of their supplies. Who dares trespass on my mountains? The woman's voice demanded, approaching them. Out of the corner of his eye, Kakashi could see Naime shaking terribly. She kept her eyes to the ground as the woman came into view. She was much taller than Kakashi remembered seeing her in Naime's memories, but her cruel demeanor was definitely the same. Her long, dark hair was more gray now, and was braided down her back. The scar running through her face and neck had not aged as well as she had and was rather a horrid-looking blemish on her skin. Her green eyes pierced through the two of them. Shinju.